All right, everybody, we're getting settled in. KBO Chats live here on a Monday evening. I'm Sam Pasco alongside Eric Halterman, and we are here to break down everything in this brand new week of KBO action. We got rotowire.com pulled up here, looking at all the team standings, lineups, daily lineups, everything you need to know. Before we dive into it, do you want to say comments are open? Let us know in the comment section what your best pick is, who your favorite players. We will get to it as is what we're all about here. Barry, some of our regulars coming back, getting ready for tonight's show. Should be a great one. We'll see how long we go. But Eric, how you feeling right now?
Doing pretty good. I think we're through maybe 2 or 3 straight weeks of fireworks here that my dog wasn't too happy about. So it's going to be nice to sleep a little better. Other than that, life's pretty good.
I like it. I like it. Hopefully the only fireworks we will be seeing will be on the KBO Diamond. It's across the ocean for a lot of us here. But that does not mean we can't have some great games and some great picks as we take a look at our daily lineups here. But before we do, it is a brand new week of action. You want to talk a little bit about some power rankings first, Eric? Shall we talk a little bit about where these teams in the standings kind of really rank in terms of power?
Yeah, let's go. So what do we want to start with? We got Dinos up top, as usual. I haven't moved them. They've sat up top every single week that I've done these. Still pretty safe. There was a chance that the Heroes could have moved up to number 1. They've been in many ways the hottest team in the league. Since the Dinos swept the Heroes back in late May, the Heroes have actually outperformed them by about 3.5 games. So you could certainly make the case that they're the best team in the league right now. When they lost 2 or 3 over the weekend, that was enough for me to keep them number 2. But I think it's just about as close as ever. So it's closer to a 2-team tier at the top than it's been for, I think, quite some time.
Really, let me ask you about that, because when we look at the Heroes in the last couple of games, you see that, maybe, just maybe, they're struggling a little bit. They lose 2 of 3 against the Wiz. They lost that game against the Bears, and I know that doesn't seem like that big a thing, but they won 11 of their 12 before that. Now into July, they're struggling. Is this some room for some concern, or you really think that they are at that Dinos level of greatness in the KBO?
It's possible. We'll see if that continues. They've got a couple tough matchups this week with a couple borderline playoff teams in the Lions and Tigers. But, man, they were just so good for so many series in a row against a bunch of good teams. I mean, sweeping the Twins, taking 2 out of 3 from the Tigers and Bears. So I'm going to forgive them 1 loss series against the Wiz. I'm expecting them to bounce back based on how they played for the last, 5-6 weeks. But you're right, there were the beginnings of signs of weakness, though I do think that's as much about the Wiz being probably better than the standings say than about the Heroes starting to slip. But I think we'll find out over this tough stretch for the Heroes.
And speaking of the Heroes, since we are on them, I know your DFS name to know is not this guy, but I do got to mention another pretty young shortstop by the name of Addison Russell, the former Chicago Cub. Looks like he will be joining the team later in this week. How big an upgrade is he for this Heroes team? Does that addition maybe put them past the Dinos if he can perform?
Yeah, it could well be. One of the things about my power rankings is they're meant to be fantasy focused since they're, on RotoWire. So my main goal with them is to provide a breakdown of how tough a matchup I think each team is today for lineups that are being set today. And I do think the fact that the Heroes have been as good as they have been with only 1 foreign player since they cut Taylor Motter very early in the season, and they've been without their second foreign pitcher, Jake Brigham, for most of the year. I do think once they get Brigham back and they add Russell, they could well be the best team in the league. And the fact that they'll get to play the Korean series at home, if they make it that far, certainly bodes well for their chances of winning it all. I think the expectations of Russell is he should be probably one of the better foreign hitters. And the fact that he can play shortstop, they don't exactly need a shortstop because Ha-Seong Kim is good. And Hae-Sung Kim has been playing there too. He's been pretty good too. They don't really need him defensively, but certainly doesn't hurt that he can play there. He has more MLB experience than any other foreign hitter in the league right now, and I believe his numbers are among the best. So I think there's every reason to believe that all else being equal, he'll be one of the better hitters in the league. We'll see what happens with a guy joining a team in the middle of the season, in the middle of a pandemic. Who knows? If there's ever a time when somebody might underperform, it would be in a situation that's this just plain unusual. But I think purely based on what he's shown in the big leagues so far, I think we should expect him to be one of the better hitters in the league.
Definitely an interesting storyline to follow as the KBO season progresses. In case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats Live. Sam Pasco, Eric Holtman. We are taking your questions on everything Korean baseball. SG, one of our regulars here, saying, hi, guys, what's up? If you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, hit us with a comment, your best pick, your thoughts, your favorite player. We want to talk about here. The show is for you, the players and the fans of KBO, the DFS players, that is. And we are giving you the insight here. We finished talking about the top two teams here, Dinos Heroes. Now we move to number 3, the Deuce and Bears, number 4, the Samsung Lions, and number 5, the Kia Tigers. First up, what's up here, Eric? Samsung all the way up to number 4. They were number 7 at one point, almost last week. What happened to the Samsung team that you propelled them into the number 4 spot?
Yeah, so there's basically a big clump from 4 all the way down to 7, actually. I think there's a pretty good big gap between the Bears and the rest below them. The Bears have struggled against the Dinos and Heroes. They're 4-8 against the 2 best teams, but they're comfortably above the rest. But there's a big clump from the Lions through the Tigers, the Wiz, and the Twins, who I actually dropped all the way down to 7. All 4 of those teams I see as pretty equal right now. The Lions started out slowly, but they've been on a real charge lately. 10-3 over the last 13 games. I still am not convinced about their top-end talent. But again, they're kind of like the Heroes in that they've been having quite a run with only one foreign player lately. David Buchanan, their pitcher. They've been without Ben Lively, their other foreign pitcher, for much of the year, and Tyler Saladino's been out for a couple weeks, their hitter. So they've been doing it with a bunch of kind of mediocre-looking local talent, and I'm somewhat confused by it, especially their pitching staff. Most of them are outperforming their underlying numbers for most of the year, but I had to give them respect based on how they've been playing. They've just been better than the Tigers and better than the Twins for at least a couple weeks. And now that they've got Seung-Won Oh, former major leaguer, back as their closer, that helps for sure. His underlying numbers haven't been awesome, but it's tiny sample of just a couple appearances. So just based on how they played lately, I think they deserve respect as a legitimate playoff team. I think they've got a bit of a gauntlet coming up, though. They are facing, in their next few series, the Heroes, Wiz, and Tigers. So we could well see them fall. I think a lot of their recent run has been a factor of playing some bad teams. They had the Eagles, Giants, Wyverns all in a row. Then they took 2 out of 3 against the Twins as well. So they've shown they can beat playoff teams. So I think they deserve that respect for now. I'm not sold on them staying there, but with the way they've been lately,
I like it.
That's where I've got them for now.
I like it. Oh, a guy right here. I like this Lions team. Like you said, Buchanan kind of carrying them right now. If you've been following some of the KBO tweets from the broadcast, he's definitely one more of the quirky personality type, having some fun with the banana and playing with his friend's gloves after an error. What's wrong with this glove? But all that great stuff. Some great gifts over at my KBO and talking about that and the Lions, maybe putting it together. But we actually had a question about the Bears here, and I put the little note here. Versus good teams, they are bad. But there's a good point here. Barry brings up that they actually struggled against a bad team as well, the Eagles. That seems to almost be their kryptonite a little bit. Are we worried about the Bears long term, that they might struggle against a team like Hanwha, long term?
I think they're just more beatable than the top 2 teams, and I think a lot of it's because they just don't have a lot of depth in the rotation. They've been carried by their lineup, but lineups have off days. It happens, even against worse pitching. And since they give up so many runs, if the lineup goes cold for a series, they're going to have problems, even against the likes of Hanwha. So they mostly just seem to have consistency issues. I still think their lineup is talented enough that they should pretty comfortably make the playoffs. And when you shrink pitching staffs in the postseason, get to drop out your fifth starter, maybe even your fourth, depending on how you manage the staff. I think they'll still be a force to be reckoned with in the postseason, but they're definitely a step below the top two just because they're capable of losing to anybody. Nobody's lost more times to the Eagles this season than they have, which is a fun stat for sure.
Yes, definitely very unusual when you see a top three team lose so bad to such a bad team in the Eagles. So have to follow that. We were talking about the Lions, but just below them, Barry again talking about the Tigers. Maybe looking a little bit more vulnerable. Aaron Brooks looking fine, but maybe beatable, losing to Mike Wright in the series finale last week. How do we feel about them being in a class of their own still? Or maybe has that gap tightened a little bit like you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, with the Twins falling and the Lions charging, and even the Wiz charging too, it's suddenly, I think, a real battle for the final couple playoff spots, and I don't think the Tigers are at all locked in, especially with Preston Tucker hitting the way he's been lately. I think he's got an OPS in the 300s for the last 12 or so games, maybe just 10, I'm not sure, but it's been a while that he's been quite bad. So when he's not doing anything, they don't have a lot of depth in that lineup. They lost Sun Bin Kim, their leadoff guy who was leading the league in batting average. So they're kind of left with just veteran slugger Hyung-Woo Choi and some good starters. And that's not necessarily enough to lock you into the playoffs by any means. I'm still a big fan of their rotation, but it's a pretty one-dimensional team at the moment, which means they end up pretty close to 500, I think.
Yeah, that's got to be concerning when you definitely consider the other teams that are right on their tails, including the KT Wiz and the LG Twins. I actually want to first start with the Twins here as we move down the power rankings. I'm not really surprised by this. Were you surprised a little bit by writing this? Because when you consider what Ramos, hasn't done, I feel like they should almost be even lower. What are your thoughts on this Twins team that last week was ranked as high as number 4?
Yeah, there's not really much room for them to fall much lower than this. I don't think the Giants are close to the rest of the pack up here, but I think I did drop them below the Wiz, despite the fact that they're 4.5 games above them in the standings, just because they've been real bad lately. 4-11 over their last 15 games, and I think, as I pointed out there, it's just been their foreign players underperforming. Ramos obviously was great early in the year, but ever since he had those ankle and back issues, he has not hit like himself at all. And Tyler Wilson and Casey Kelly, they're not the problem, but they're not pitching like the 1-2 punch you want at the top of the rotation from your two foreign pitchers, which they pitched like last year. They're solidly mediocre ERAs, which are backed up by solidly mediocre peripherals. So when you just don't have those stars at the top of the rotation that you're supposed to have, that you end up pretty mediocre when the lineup's not hitting like it's supposed to. Hyun-Soo Kim is coming alive. He's homered in 3 straight games. And they do have some talent. They've got some guys coming back from injury coming up. Specifically, Hyung-Jong Lee, who's missed the entire year. He's had an OPS of 800 last year. Not a star, but adding more depth to the top bit of their lineup. So there's definitely plenty of hope for them, but it's really come unglued lately. And we're going to see him on ESPN 4 times this week, so I hope they give us some actually good games.
Yes, in case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats Live. We see your comments in the comment section. We will get to everyone. Do not worry. This show is for you. We are covering everything KBO related, talking power rankings, picks, standings, talking about the LG Twins right now. Tyler Wilson and Casey Kelly just have been disappointing. They make me sad this year. Last year, maybe that's a different story, but this year, they're really letting down this team that had playoff aspirations as early as last week, and now they are really struggling. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But another team that's right there before we get into the real seller and the real bad teams of the KBO, the KT Wiz, Mel Rojas Jr., MVP candidate. How do we feel about them and their pitching? We're getting a lot of comments about their pitching staff. Is that enough to maybe make them a competitive team, or are they still working over some kinks that really make them competitive?
Well, they won 12 of the last 18, so they've been figuring things out. Like I noted there, their pitching staff has been quite good over that stretch. They're allowed 4.7 runs per game. That would be third best over the course of the full season. I'm not sure if they can keep that up, but you've seen, based on their recent performance, how good they can be when they can pitch. I've said in the past, you'd much rather have, if you're a bad team, you much rather have one side of the ball be very good and the other be very bad, because there's room to improve that compared to being kind of mediocre at both. And the Wiz are showing when you go from bad to mediocre on the pitching side while still having some of the best hitters in the game. Mel Rojas Jr. is got to be the MVP if you're picking a hitter at this point. It's either him or maybe Chang Mo-koo or Eric Jokic on the pitching side. But they also have the number 2 guy in OPS as well, Baeko Gong. I think he's now played enough following that injury that he's a qualified hitter again. They now have the number 1 and 2 hitters, unqualified hitters in OPS. And that's a core that can win you some games if you just get decent pitching, and that's what they're getting right now. They did finally get a decent start from Odrisamer Despaigne last time out, for the first time in a while, which they certainly needed. William Cuevas is back from an injury. Hasn't been elite, but they at least have him. So I think they're still very much in it. They're a few games out of the playoffs still, but we got plenty of time. And, they have at least one half of the ball. I think they will definitely stick in it as long as they can be even mediocre on the pitching side.
I like it. Sean here mentioning the same thing. If they can have that run production level like Doosan, and then also have maybe that pitching that Samsung like, this team is dangerous, especially with Mel Rojas Jr. leading that offensive charge, our MVP candidate so far this year. Speaking of teams that are not MVP, though, we got the Lotte Giants, SK Wyverns, and the Hanwha Eagles. I don't even know where to start with these teams. We're getting a lot of comments about other picks in today's game, so I don't know how much time we want to spend on these bottom tier teams. But let me ask you, is there any hope from this bottom group? I mean, when you look at Lotte, having Dan Straley, you miss to think, you have the best pitcher in the league and you're 8th? That's concerning. What do you think?
Yeah, I've never really bought into them much. I just don't think they have enough in their lineup, and they don't have a deep enough rotation either. I think they're pretty close to the Wyverns. The fact that they lost 2 of 3 to them would ordinarily give them a chance to fall even below the Wyverns, but they've been 9 games up on them over the course of the season, so I'll still keep them at 8th. How can they turn things around? I'm not really sure. They just don't have the elite bats to carry them. They deliberately went with the defense first guy with their foreign hitter in shortstop Dixon Machado. Daiho Lee can still hit, but he's 37 years old. Asap San, who I highlighted here, can hit fine, but he's not a huge power hitter or anything. They just don't have the top end talent on offense, and they don't have depth in the rotation. But it's commendable that they're even this good, because they were the worst team in the league by quite a big margin last year. So the fact that they're better than the Wyverns by a considerable margin when the Wyverns finished tied for the best record in the regular season, that's, it shows that they're on the right track. But I don't think they intended to compete this year, the Giants. So the fact that they're even within striking distance of 500 this late, I think they'll be happy with that. And the Wyverns, they had lost 17 of 20 heading into their weekend series with the Giants. I was very prepared to drop them below the Eagles, but then they took 2 of 3, and the Eagles won just a single game all week. So I've still got them ahead of the Eagles, but they're pretty close down there. That both teams are just quite bad. Wyverns are a little bit more interesting for fantasy purposes because they do have Jung Che and Jamie Romack heading in the center of the lineup, whereas the Eagles have next to nothing. But I would not be very scared to face either team right now.
Yeah, both very bad teams, and that's why they're 9 and 10 in our power rankings. I can't even talk about the Eagles. I mean, week after week, with 13 wins, 40 losses, that's just straight up disappointing. I can't even with the Eagles right now. So let's move on to our daily lineups. A lot of questions coming in here about different picks. I want to first start with the KT Wiz taking on the Kia Tigers, a team known for their pitching. But do we think that the Wiz could maybe win on the money line here, just straight up? Do they have enough offensive power to overcome Kia's pretty decent starting pitcher tonight?
I think I wouldn't favor them tonight, but I don't hate it. I think it's close enough that if you like your odds, I would be fine going for it. I'm a big fan of Ki Young Im. He's coming off of one mediocre start, but He's in the middle of a breakout season. That ERA is not much of a fluke. He strikes out an above average number of guys and barely walks anybody. And there's not much else you can ask for from a pitcher. He's got a tough matchup against the Wiz, but he's one of the better pitchers in the league this year. As for Jasong Bay, very mediocre underlying numbers, below average strikeouts, above average walks. I don't think that ERA is going to stay that low that long. It may not rise tonight against the Tigers because the Tigers can't really hit, especially again with Preston Tucker. He's hitting 105, 209, 132 in his last 10 games. So that's, OPS of 341 in 10 games is not what you want from your foreign hitter. I guess we've got no news on him recently because the most recent news says he's on a hitting streak. That's not true at all. He's about as bad as he can be, but when you don't do anything noteworthy, you don't get a note, I guess. So I could see Bay leading the Wiz to a win tonight just because Tigers just aren't very threatening. But I think I would slightly favor the Tigers just because I'm mostly a big fan of Ki-Young Im.
I like it. Yes. Do note here, we have some great notes here, but if a guy doesn't perform, there's nothing to write about. You always got to look at that date there when you look up a guy. June 19th was when his hitting streak continued. Definitely got to consider that it is July now. I know that's crazy to say, but it is July, and Tucker is cold right now. Going back to our lineups here, trying to get to all you guys on all the picks here. A lot of great comments here, and I was talking about the Wiz as well, the pitching matchups. How do we feel about the over then? 9.5 runs is what's set out consensus-wise. How dominant can Kim be tonight?
It's tough to be dominant against Mel Rojas and Becco Gong, so I wouldn't feel super confident in him having a low number. For fantasy purposes, he's the kind of guy who will have a low floor but some high upside. Just because pretty much anybody facing those guys has a low floor. So I wouldn't be too confident about the under, especially because I'm not a big fan of Jasong Bay. Guess it's not all that useful advice to say that looks pretty close, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't trust Bay to hold down the Tigers. I don't trust him to hold down the Wiz. But I do like him, and I don't like the Tigers lineup, so it really could go either way. I might lean slight under, I guess, if I had to pick a side.
All right, a lot of great comments here we're going through here. I want to mention Sean, one of the most recent comments here. Chang Mo Kude. Gotta always be excited when that happens. When you see his name pop up, you got to expect a dominant start. Do you think we can see that again tonight as he faces a very lowly Wyverns team that sits just at 16-37 on the year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the most lopsided pitching matchups, or pitcher against the lineup matchup of the season. I guess only dwarfed by the time that Chang Moku faced the Eagles. When he did that, he held them to 1 run in 6 innings, and that's a mediocre performance from his standards. He actually is giving up runs these days. He gave up 2 his last time out, which was his second worst of the year. But, he struck out 11 and walked none, so I'm not exactly worried. He's still probably the best pitcher in the league. Eric Jokic, a slightly better ERA, I think. But Koo's strikeout numbers are in another level. I don't think anybody's close to him among qualified starters this year. I think there's basically no better play than him almost every day, and him against the lowly Wyverns. It's about as obvious as it gets there.
And then how confident would you be with pairing them? Chang Mo-koo, I got to say, best pitcher, so I'm going to assume that you're going to go with him. But how would you feel about pairing that then with a Doosan parlay here that we are having a comment here about that? Are you confident enough in the Bears to win against a Twins team that has been falling in the power rankings the past couple of weeks?
I would probably give the edge to the Bears there based on recent performance. But Shaw is okay, and he does throw left-handed. His ERA is not great, but his underlying numbers are at least mediocre. And the fact that he's left-handed does help him against the heart of that Bears order. The Jose Fernandez, Jael J1 Kim. The three of them are all excellent left-handed bats. So in theory, a lefty going against them gives them a bit of an edge. But I would definitely lean Bears based on recent performance. I'm just not getting any real good hitting out of the Twins these days. I'm not a big fan of Bears starter, Young Ha Lee. He looked good as a very young pitcher last year and just didn't follow it up at all this year. He is coming off a decent start, but even that decent start came with as many walks as strikeouts, so I wouldn't say he's necessarily turned things around. So there's definitely a chance that this is the time the Twins bounce back. I think it's going to be pretty close. It's a rivalry game, so maybe that is the kind of thing that shakes the Twins out of their slump. The last matchup between these two teams is what started the Twins slump. They got swept by the Bears and then have gone on to win just 4 of their last 15 games. So unless you think the Twins have suddenly pulled out of the slump, I think you side with the Bears, but I don't think it's particularly a clear choice.
What about for the total here? We got a comment about under 10.5. Are you still confident in the starting pitchers? Maybe getting it under control and maybe feeding off the mental momentum, since there's no fans, that to kind of keep this game under wraps and under 10.5 runs?
I think I would go over. It is at Jamsil Baseball Stadium, which is the most pitcher-friendly park in the league. But Wu Chan Cha for the Twins, pretty mediocre, and Young Ali for the Bears, pretty poor. They might need some help from the Twins lineup to actually hit that over, but I think that shouldn't be too hard against Lee. So I would lean over on that one, even given the park.
I like it. Hope you like that too, SG. And we want to go back to that Dinos game, trying to get to everyone's comments here. It's great. We're getting great interaction. Keep them coming. We're here to talk about what you want to talk about in the KBO. We got the information. You hit us with the questions. Going back to Changmo Kude down here. For the first 5, you'd have to think, okay, you're talking about Changmo Ku, and he has been letting up runs, but he goes deep into games, and he's pretty much dominant in those early innings. Do you think the Dinos offense will be able to kind of slow it down to hit that under in the first 5, or do you think they could score 5 runs in the first inning against Moon?
I do actually like Sungwon Moon. I think his ERA is backed up by his underlying numbers. He's got very good strikeout rate, good walk rate. One of the rare bright spots on the Wyverns. Probably the 3rd best pitcher on the day after Koo and Ki Young Im of the Tigers, unless I'm forgetting somebody. So I do think he's got a very good chance to keep the Dinos bats quiet at least early on. I'd be interested in that one.
All right, we like the first 5 under, and the great thing about rotowire.com, all our great KBO coverage, you can actually see how long he went in each start, Changmo Ku that is, and sort by inning. You can see he's gone 8 innings twice, has only gone less than 5 innings once. So you have to assume that he's going to be on the mound for those first 5, and you got to like that under. We get some other great comments here. This is a hefty one here. A fun fact about this. Eric, do you make anything of this? We're bringing in some percentages for first inning in that aspect. Does that change your mind or anything, or kind of complement your idea? What do you think? Yeah, read it for a second here.
Well, two inning wasn't necessarily something. Yeah. So Moon has given up 0 runs in the first inning both times. I wouldn't necessarily read a ton into what's essentially a 2-inning sample, but it does reflect the fact that he has pitched quite well this year. The Dinos, their lineup is maybe more stacked in the middle. Normally, I think the first inning is the hardest, but Myung-Ki Lee has been the weakest of their 9 regulars, and he leads off. So maybe that slightly leans in that direction. Hee-Dong Kwon has been, I think, their 2nd best hitter by OPS among the regulars, but he doesn't have much of a track record. So maybe that contributes to keeping the first inning total down. But I would more just think about how good Moon is in general, and he is pretty good. So the odds of him holding even the Dinos scoreless in any one given inning are pretty strong.
All right. We're getting some other comments here. In case you're just tuning in, it's KBO Chats live. Sam Pasco, Eric Halterman talking everything KBO. I wanted to get to another comment here. It was a little older, a little while ago, but Alex talking about Koo, not Changmo Koo, but Jawook Koo, about being the top play of the night for Samsung as we move over to David Buchanan's start against the Heroes. Is he your favorite, maybe for DFS today, as we talk about this series? Jawook Koo
Having a
here.
bit of a bad connection here, but I think I got your question. Jawa Ku is one of the only reliable Lions hitters with Tyler Saladino out. Somehow they're managing to go on this run with a bunch of pretty mediocre bats. So generally, he would be my top play among their hitters. He is facing a lefty in Jae-Woong Kim, but Jae-Woong Kim has basically no track record, decent peripherals, but a tiny sample. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be a big fan of a lefty-on-lefty matchup. So there's a decent chance he would be edged out, especially because outfield is a deep position on DraftKings. I guess on FanDuel, it's more or less the same since they just do generic infield and outfield. But definitely, most days, he's definitely the play for the Lions, and I wouldn't hate him tonight, even with a lefty on the mound, because that lefty just isn't particularly imposing.
You're talking about the lefty and Kim. Let's turn our attention now to Samsung's pitcher, the righty, David Buchanan, who I think has quietly been maybe one of the best pitchers in recent performances, coming off a complete game, one-run complete game. Are we confident in him, even he is a righty, are confident in him in shutting down the Heroes lineup?
I am never confident in David Buchanan because whenever I am, he gives up 8 or 10 runs. I guess he's only done that twice, so maybe that's unfair to him. But it's always right after I say he's going to be good. So he's the kind of guy, maybe avoid him in cash game type things because the downside is very high, especially against the Heroes, who have one of the better lineups in the league. He's got pretty mediocre underlying numbers, but he's able to keep the run total down in most of his starts. But I think Buchanan on the whole is more like a number 3 starter than an ace. So I wouldn't be all that confident him against one of the better lineups in the league here, especially because of those huge blowups. But in a big tournament kind of deal, he definitely has potential for a good game. So I don't hate him there.
I don't know what's going on. Everyone here, I'm Team Buchanan. I think he's a fun guy. I think he can produce, especially look at what he did his last start out. But you and Sean are saying, maybe not. But what am I missing here? Looking at these numbers, I see outside 2 starts. Okay, pretty bad. Hanwha, okay, fluke game. Changmo Koo had a fluke game against them too, so I'm not too worried about that. LG back when they were a powerhouse, okay, fine. But outside that, and opening day, 7 of his 10 starts, 2 or less runs, and each one going at least 5 innings, going 5 strong. What am I missing about Buchanan? Why is he someone that you want to avoid, and in Sean's case, put on your heavy avoid list?
The main thing for me is he just doesn't strike out that many guys, so that means he's pretty reliant on his defense doing the work and batted balls finding the gloves. And sometimes they all find holes for an entire game, like you've seen twice. He's not a terrible strikeout arm, but he's below average in that regard. And I'm generally not too confident in guys who have below average strikeout rates because they just rely on factors outside their direct control. Obviously, pitchers can be good at generating weak contact reliably. And the fact that Buchanan's carved out a pretty decent season here means he's probably doing that to a certain extent. But when you rely on batted balls, hitting gloves, more than most guys, you're not going to be somebody that I'm super confident in.
And now looking at the offense that he's facing is the Kiwoom Heroes. We can see here, rotowire.com. We have our rankings here. Looking at these, I'm seeing a pretty average, slightly above average Kiwoom offense. Does that kind of shift how you think about the total here? Do you think maybe they're a little better than these numbers say or a little worse? How do we feel at the Kiwoom offense?
I have a lot of faith in the Kiwoom offense. Their top 4 guys, I guess Dongwon Park has moved down a bit. He was hitting 4 or 5 as a catcher. he's had a bit of a poor stretch, so maybe it's just the top four: Kyun Chang So, Ha-Seong Kim, Jung-Hoo Lee, and Byung-Ho Park. But those four are among the best top four in the league. I think they can put up numbers against anybody. I wouldn't hate using any of them, even against a guy like Buchanan. I think Jung-Ho Lee is basically a fine play against every single right-hander. And Ha-Seong Kim is hitting the ball so well, I'd be willing to play him even without the platoon advantage, especially on DraftKings, where the fact that he's a shortstop matters a lot. So I wouldn't hate their guys against Buchanan at all. And I don't trust the hero starter, Jae-Woon Kim. Like I said, he's mostly just because he's barely played this year. So don't have a lot of reason to trust him. And the Lions offense, even if it's mediocre, I think they could score some runs on him. So I think I would lean over on those two. Though again, there's always a chance that David Buchanan decides to throw, a no-hitter or something just because I'm doubting him. So I would lean over, but I'm not super confident there.
I bet you Sean would agree as well. But hey, I like Buchanan. We'll have to see. And maybe just your negativity will somehow turn it where he will throw a no-hitter, because that is within his realm of possibility. If you look at his last start and what he's done in terms of the limiting runs department, I will give you that the strikeouts are a little lackluster outside a few starts. So I think that will be a pretty interesting series to look out for. Buchanan on the bump taking on the Heroes. And now moving to the last series, of course, featuring two teams that are at or near the bottom of the power rankings, the Lotte Giants and the Hanwha Eagles. Anything noteworthy about these teams outside this crazy 10 ERA from the Lotte starter? What is going on in this series?
Yeah, we want to spend a full hour on these two, right? I think that was what the plan was. Wansung Jang, I mean, he's barely pitched here. That's how you get an ERA. But that's not to say he's good. He hasn't had an ERA below 5.5 since 2014. Most of that's in seasons where he's throwing like 10 innings. But not a lot of reason to trust him. I would love to stack the Eagles tonight if there were Eagles worth stacking, which unfortunately there aren't. But he's the kind of opponent where you could take a flyer on any Eagle for very cheap, and I wouldn't hate that. The one Eagle I've been interested in lately on the offensive side is their number 2 hitter, Yoon-Won Jung. He's been on a pretty good roll over his past 2 weeks or so. He's a 20-year-old who is not standing out in any one particular way, but he's standing out at least among the Eagles in that he is hitting the ball acceptably well lately. But he's a lefty, so I'm not sure I would go in on him against Wansung Jung, even though Jung has looked quite bad. Dan Straley's going for the Eagles in game 2. That's going to be one of the easiest picks of the year. Sorry, Dan Straley going for the Giants against the Eagles. That's not going to take a lot of thought, even though Straley's coming off some of his more mediocre starts. Might also be interested in some Eagles against Adrian Sampson in game 3 because he's been pretty bad and he throws righties, so maybe you use some of the Eagles lefties. But not a lot from that side. Could maybe see starting Eagles starter tonight, Shi-Wan Jung. He strikes people out, which is something. You get points for that. So maybe you figure I'll take a couple homers to go with a decent amount of strikeouts, and he might actually get a win because it's against the Giants. Yeah, he's given up a BABIP of 414, which you expect that to fall pretty far. You'd expect it to be just a little bit over 300 in the KBO. So maybe he deserves better. And as you're showing there, he's got excellent strikeout numbers. He's got the chance for a big number. So he's somebody I'd like if the price is right, given the matchup. He has been pitching well lately. So I'm always hesitant to say anything good about any Eagle, but I'd be more interested in him definitely than Wansung Jung tonight.
Yes, you have to be hesitant with this Eagles team as they just disappoint what it seems like night after night. But looking at these starting pitching numbers, I think there's some hope, and I think Barry's right here that they have that starting pitching advantage. Are you not more confident at these numbers because he's on the Eagles? Because just looking at these numbers with no name, I would think, I'm pretty encouraged, especially when you consider they're playing a Lotte Giants team that, ranks near the bottom in a lot of offensive categories, to be exact, 8th in runs per game.
Yeah, I am decently a fan of Jong tonight. He'd be one of the guys I'm more interested in, but on the season as a whole, he's given up plenty of runs and he's walking a ton of guys, so he's far from reliable. That whip is particularly bad, mostly because he's walking everybody. But if you're looking for upside, there's plenty of upside there, I think.
All right, fair. You got me with the ERA and the whip. Maybe not the lockdown starter that you consider Straley or Sampson, like you mentioned, coming later in this series. But Sean here talking about Eagles, maybe a good play. And what else? We got, I think, a first-time comment here from Alexander. Welcome. In case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats live. Sam Pasco, Eric Halterman, talking everything KBO, answering your questions, figuring out your best picks and all that. We're getting some great viewership here. A couple weeks now into this, and it's great to see you guys engaged. And Eric, I defer this question to you. How do we feel about this GPP play?
If he's cheap enough, the fact that he gets to face a Twins lineup that's really struggled lately is a little bit interesting. You're going to have a lot of scrolling if you're searching Lee in the KBO there.
Yes.
You'll have more luck getting to him that way. But he hasn't been particularly good this year at all. His last start, he only gave up 1 earned run, but he walked as many guys as he struck out. His 3 starts before that, he gave up 7, 7, and 4 earned runs. So it's been a pretty bad stretch and a pretty bad season overall. So he's not somebody I play with anything close to confidence, but it's the kind of thing where, hey, he's playing the Twins. If you want to take somebody that, in theory, not too many people should be on, given his numbers, there's definitely a universe in which he does well, but that's more a factor of the Twins being bad lately than Lee being somebody I particularly trust.
And that is Alexander's first comment. So, Eric, that was some great analysis. Alexander, keep coming back here to RotoWire on rotowire.com. Some great KBO knowledge, some great facts. In case you're wondering, I don't know, we heard a dog barking or something. And Alex said, "Where am I?" Well, this is the KBO Chats live, talking everything. Here, I want to get another pick here. Bears and the Dinos -1.5. Any thoughts? We talked about this before. Parlay between the two best teams. I'll put that loosely. But are we confident them both getting the win tonight?
Yeah, like I said, that Bears-Twins game is pretty close to a toss-up. I would definitely be a fan of Dinos with Chang Mo-Koo against the Wyverns. Doesn't get much clearer than that. It looks like they've also got the Heroes in there, which is also close to a toss-up, given that the Lions have been playing very well lately, and they do have the better pitcher in David Buchanan, even though, as I said, I don't particularly trust him. I don't hate any of those 3 picks, but the only obvious one there, I think, is the Dinos.
Yeah, you got to be when you got Chang Mo-Koo on the bump. And I think wrapping up here, still a lot of people on. If you have any other questions, let us know here on KBO Chats Live. Is Eagles, Lotte, going back to this game? I don't know how we keep going back to this one, but think about
like
the over for the
we're
first
spending an hour on it.
Yes, we are. It just happened. They got that aura that just kind of attracts fans, even though they are so bad. You look at those records. For the over for the first 5, I would think yes. Eric, I defer to you.
If it was anyone but the Eagles, I would think they have a shot of hitting the over on their own, because Won-Sung Jang has done basically nothing for about 5 years. And Shi-Wen Jang can give up runs to anybody, so even though I said some good things about him before, you can definitely see them hitting the over there. But, man, it's hard to pick an over when these 2 lineups are involved. So it's not one I'd be confident in, but I don't mind that pick at all.
Going back to Alexander, we're all about engagement here. Long-time reader, first-time watcher of the show. In case you guys are just new to the show, yeah, welcome in. Nice to have you. We're every Monday and Thursday, 5:30, maybe 5:35 now, Pacific, 8:30, 8:35 Eastern, beginning the series, taking a look at, the series, a 3-game series that splits up the KBO week. We have all our projected starters as well. And as we are going a little longer here, Eric, is there any game 2, game 3 that you're excited about? You mentioned Straley and Sampson, but as we're letting some other people comment in here, anyone else you're really excited about come Wednesday, Thursday?
Yeah, that Australia against the Eagles on Wednesday. That's pretty big mismatch. A day without a ton of great pitchers there. Drew Gagnon against the Wiz is going to be fun. Gagnon against Despagne in the third game is going to be a lot of fun. That's two of the Gagnon's been one of the better pitchers this year. Despagne has been very up and down. I saw a comment there about the most confident pick apart from the Dinos, and also somebody talking about the Tigers. That would be the one I would say. I think it's going to be a really interesting night, honestly. I think the Dinos are the only thing close to a clear favorite. We're really going to have some good series all week, mostly because the bottom three teams are playing each other a lot. So we're going to see just a whole bunch of good series, both midweek and over the weekend. I think the Tigers would be my second favorite pick of the night, mostly because the gap between Ki Young Im and Jasung Bae is a lot bigger than their ERAs suggest. So even though the Wiz have a better lineup, I think I would side with the Tigers as my next pick.
You know, I'm surprised you're going with the Tigers here. And going off Juan here, I mean, when you consider what Preston Tucker hasn't been doing, how cold he's been, I don't know if this Tigers lineup can keep up with Becco Gong and Mel Rojas if it turns into a slugfest tonight. But I guess you don't think that will happen?
Right. If it turns into a slugfest, they've already lost. The only reason I'm on the Tigers is I'm a big fan of Ki Young Im. I think he's having a breakout year. He did only strike out, I think, one guy in his last start, but most of the season he's been very reliable. So that would be the reason I'd have more confidence in him than anybody else on the slate.
And staying with this game, KT Wiz money line. Here are options taking that one. Hey, we appreciate all the kind comments and support. We do the show for you, the guys. You know, just everyone loving the KBO. We're great to provide some really great content for you guys. But this Wiz team, anything else notable about them that, you know, maybe make that money line maybe a little more confident so you can sleep easy tonight knowing that the Wiz have a pretty strong chance of winning?
Again, Im is a pitcher that I like a lot, but the Wiz can score against anybody. Rojas and Gong is the best 1-2 punch in the league, maybe the best two hitters overall right now. So not a ton of confidence, but I'm happy enough with that one. Even though, like I said, I would probably lean Tigers.
All right, getting a lot of thanks here. Again, our most confident pick, like you said, second one is the Kia Tigers outside of the NC Dinos. So as we begin to wrap up, Barry, saying it's a good show tonight. Yes, it has been. Let's get your top three picks. Let's finalize it here. I guess it's the first time we're doing this, but as we end tonight's show, maybe shows going forward, let's get your 1, 2, 3 top picks. And I'm going to assume number 1 is going to be the Dinos.
Yeah, can number 2 and 3 also be the Dinos? It's a big gap between them and the others right now. If we're doing overs and unders, Twins and Bears over probably is number 2, just because don't trust either of the pitchers. Number 3, there's not a third one that I feel extremely confident in, so I think I would lean Ki Young Im and the Tigers. But again, I don't disagree too hard with anybody who takes the Wiz on this one. So it's a big gap from those three. Unfortunately, we can't do the pick against the Eagles plan quite as well this time when they're facing the Giants and one of the worst pitchers on the slate. So
yes,
Sean's go-to plan doesn't quite work as well this time.
Kind of shocking that we'd be saying that, you know, picking against the Eagles tonight, you know, isn't necessarily the best idea, as they maybe have the starting pitcher advantage tonight, which is something you got to say when you can, because it does not happen all that often, as they are bad. Thanks again to you guys. Get some more thanks. Going to be interesting to watch. We got our top picks. We're working on our pick'em. In case you guys are fans of the World Baseball pick'em we run, it is under some development right now. I'll give you a little wink as we are working on some more prizes, potentially some merchandise, some fantasy football magazines, and some longer subscriptions. Not promising anything right now, but we are working on it. and the KBO show is back. If you're looking for a little 2-minute version of just the great news that we have here on rotowire.com, as we have a lot of great news that you can easily access on the website here, rotowire.com, KBO, news, and boom, it's all right here. Sean, thank you for tuning in. You know, you guys just hit it with the praise. We really appreciate that. Eric, anything to wrap up today? Any noteworthy last little injury notes or anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Pretty light on injuries. I think I touched on Sun Bin Kim for the Tigers, who is leading the league in batting average. Without him, that does hurt their chances. That's about it. But yeah, it should be a very good week of games. A lot of good series this week. I think we're getting 6 good games on ESPN, so that should be a lot of fun. Though we'll need the Twins to actually be okay for those games to be fun because they're on 4 times this week. But if the Twins are bouncing back, I think it's 6 really good games all week. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
I like it. Last thing, don't even think about it. Over under for the Heroes Samsung game. One word, over under.
Oh, let's lean on over, which means perfect game coming from David Buchanan.
Yes, yes, please. David Buchanan back at it on the bump tonight. Let's get it. Hopefully. We'll see. All right. Follow us on Twitter at RotoWireKBO, at Eric_Halterman for a live coverage throughout the night, throughout the week. And we will see you again on Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Thanks for coming, everybody.